wearing the same underwear for weeks during filming, or appearing with crusty makeup and the heavy stench of alcohol. These are the raw truths behind the lens that studios once fought to hide. According to revelations from veteran actor Robert Duvall behind the glamorous scenes, lies a reality that sometimes forced colleagues to hold their breath, literally due to the unbelievable hygiene habits of these big names. Icons like Jack Nicholson, Al Pacino, or the goddess Ava Gardner were once symbols of perfection and allure. In the public eye, they were flawless deities holding absolute power and glory in Hollywood. But what drove these geniuses to neglect themselves to the point of becoming a nightmare for the crew? Was this a sacrifice for art, or simply the eccentric habits of great minds? Join us as we pull back the curtain on the 9 smelliest secrets in history. And don't miss the final name, the King of Hollywood, whose secret will completely change how you look at classic on-screen kisses. If you don't want to miss out on other shocking corners of Hollywood, don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now. Jack Nicholson. Shadows behind the madman's glory. When Jack Nicholson is mentioned, the public instantly recalls a maverick with a defiant smirk and roles that have etched themselves into cinematic history. However, according to what Robert Duvall witnessed from their early days building careers in Hollywood, Jack was not only a genius of acting, but also a deep genius at challenging his colleagues' sense of smell. Behind his rogue playboy persona, Jack Nicholson possessed personal habits that, as noted in numerous behind-the-scenes accounts, stood in stark contrast to his brilliant stardom. Jack's hygiene habits weren't merely a result of laziness. According to later character psychology analysts, Jack often used slovenliness as a catalyst to blur the lines between reality and the screen. The most vivid evidence came during the filming of the horror masterpiece The Shining in 1980. To perfectly embody Jack Torrance, a father slowly descending into madness within a secluded hotel, Nicholson reportedly refused even the most basic self-care. In her 2015 memoir, Watch Me, Angelica Houston, Jack's longtime partner, revealed shocking details. She shared that Jack frequently re-wore underwear for days and rarely touched soap during the intense filming process. For Jack, the heavy body odor, greasy hair, and disheveled appearance weren't filth. They were a mask that helped him maintain the character's extreme tension. However, this sacrifice for art became a nightmare for the crew. The wardrobe staff and makeup artists of The Shining recalled that Nicholson's dressing room windows always had to be flung wide open, even in the dead of the freezing English winter. The signature scent of cigarette smoke, mingled with days of accumulated sweat, created an atmosphere that stylists described as utterly suffocating. One crew member even likened standing near Jack for costume adjustments to a test of patience. Despite receiving numerous subtle complaints, Jack maintained his trademark indifference. In a 1978 interview with Rolling Stone, he bluntly stated that he lived only for art and that conventional hygiene standards were sometimes just a luxury that wasted time. Robert Duvall, who watched Jack since they were both unknown actors, admitted that these habits helped Jack create a madman image that was terrifyingly authentic on screen. The messiness of his personal life and the chaos of his relationships seemed to be two sides of the same coin. It created a strange allure, yet left those working closely with him in a dilemma, admiring his talent while dreading the close contact. Despite the behind-the-scenes controversies, no one can deny that these hidden corners molded an immortal legend. But Jack Nicholson isn't the only name to shock colleagues with an eccentric lifestyle. While Jack saw filth as part of a character's mask, our next figure took method acting to a whole different level, where the line between an A-list star and a street drifter almost vanished. That man is none other than the Godfather, Al Pacino, the actor who brought the scent of New York's grittiest slums into the most prized frames in cinema history. Let's find out why a glamorous star like him made Robert Duvall exclaim that he was hard to stand next to for too long. Al Pacino, The Godfather and The Scent of New York's Slums. If Jack Nicholson used a lack of hygiene to fuel madness for Al Pacino, it was a journey of asceticism to find a character's soul. Robert Duvall, his close co-star, and the one who directly bore the brunt on the set of The Godfather, frequently shared stories of Pacino's self-neglecting method acting. For Al Pacino, a successful role wasn't just about lines or looks. It had to permeate every pore and sometimes quite literally soak into the layers of costumes that were never changed. The story became most pungent during his preparation for Serpico, 1973. To embody an undercover cop living in the heart of a crime-ridden, grimy New York, Pacino chose an extreme method, living like a true drifter. According to records, he wandered the city's most dilapidated streets, stayed in cheap apartments, and went days without touching soap or water. Pacino wanted his body to exude the scent of exhaustion, tension, and the suffocating air of the slums. This dedication delivered a transcendent performance, but it left unforgettable memories for his colleagues. Robert Duvall once recalled the filming days of The Godfather with a pained smile. He noted that although Pacino played Michael Corleone, a powerful man always seen in impeccable suits, the reality behind the lens was the complete opposite. Duvall revealed to Esquire in 1973 that Pacino frequently appeared in white shirts with collars that had turned ivory due to accumulated sweat. The scent of cheap cigarettes mingled with stale coffee and dried sweat became a bitty signature of Al Pacino. Duvall once joked suggestively, he wasn't just playing the Godfather, he brought the smell of New York's seediest streets right into the Corleone family's luxury living room. It wasn't just Duvall. The wardrobe crew of that era admitted that caring for Pacino's costumes was a true ordeal. Instead of switching to fresh clothes after each scene, Pacino often insisted on keeping the old ones to maintain the key feel of the character. These shirts, drenched in body odor, were worn repeatedly day after day, making the space around the actor thick and difficult to breathe. This stubbornness regarding hygiene didn't stem from a lack of resources, but was a conscious choice to maintain a visceral connection with his role. In a rare later interview, when asked about his colleagues' complaints, Pacino simply remained silent and smiled. He has always been a private person, rarely caring for the standards of appearance or scent imposed by Hollywood. To him, living fully within the mind of a criminal or a suffering cop held more value than any praise for being fragrant or elegant. It was this very extremity that forged the legendary Al Pacino, a man who could make the audience hold their breath from the weight of his acting and make his colleagues hold theirs for much more practical reasons. However, if you think Pacino's slovenliness was the peak, prepare yourself for the next figure. In stark contrast to the image of a world-class goddess, this woman held views on personal hygiene that would shock even the most bohemian of men. We are talking about Brigitte Bardot, the woman who turned the concept of freedom into a whole new definition where soap and clean water were sometimes viewed as the enemies of natural allure. Why did a beauty icon take such pride in her refusal to bathe? Let's find out right now. Brigitte Bardot, the paradox of the sex symbol. The movie poster for In God Created Woman once stunned the world with a wild, raw beauty that redefined 1950s sensuality. Yet few knew that the authenticity Brigitte Bardot brought to the screen often came with an olfactory reality that was deeply challenging for those behind the lens. Robert Duvall, reflecting on the beauty icons of that era, did not hesitate to point out that Bardot was a prime example of how peak physical beauty can sometimes be inversely proportional to the use of soap. Instead of chasing Hollywood's fragrant standards, Bardot chose a lifestyle she called returning to nature. This wasn't accidental neglect, it was a deliberate manifesto. In a shocking 1963 interview with Paris Match, she bluntly declared that natural body odor was a symbol of freedom, and she found frequent bathing to be a stifling constraint. Bardot believed that water and industrial detergents only wore away the youthful vitality of a French woman's skin. This philosophy turned the film sets in Saint-Tropez into a literal battlefield for the production crew. Amidst the sweltering heat of southern France, Bardot frequently appeared with greasy blonde hair and skin glistening with days of unwashed sweat. According to crew members, the air around her was often thick with a pungent blend of dried sweat, strong Gauloise's cigarette smoke, and the scent of sandstone dust clinging to her skin. This naturalness grew so extreme that it led to visible health issues. French cinematic archives once recorded her suffering from severe folliculitis and rashes caused by prolonged dirt accumulation. Despite this, Bardot remained adamant in her refusal of soap. A wardrobe assistant revealed to The Hollywood Reporter that before close-up scenes, they often had to sneakily spray perfume throughout the room to mask the heavy scent emanating from the star. Robert Duvall admitted that while it was easy to be mesmerized by a beauty like Bardot from afar, the reality would instantly pull you back to earth as the distance closed. She was like a wild animal, refusing to be tamed by human hygiene standards, using her heavy scent to challenge the glamorous yet superficial world around her. Bardot's rebellion was a type of arrogant personal proclamation, turning her into an untouchable icon. However, while Bardot's habit stemmed from a life philosophy, our next figure fell into a much worse situation due to environmental harshness and endless benders. That man is Peter O'Toole, the legend who turned the Egyptian desert into an olfactory nightmare by choosing alcohol over water and tethering himself to a foul-smelling bacteria trap for weeks of filming. What caused this blue-eyed, charismatic legend to become the dread of the entire Lawrence of Arabia crew? Let's find out right now. Peter O'Toole, a pungent nightmare in 40-degree heat. The name Peter O'Toole is synonymous with elegance, ocean blue eyes, and a supreme acting talent. However, behind the grand frames of the masterpiece, Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, lies a story that Robert Duvall and his contemporaries often recount with an olfactory shudder. Under the blistering desert sun, reaching temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius, O'Toole wasn't just battling the harshness of nature. He was unwittingly creating a no-go zone around himself due to his hygiene habits and an utterly bohemian lifestyle. The story began with an idea that everyone initially thought was brilliant, to alleviate the agony of riding a camel for dozens of hours each day. O'Toole padded his saddle with a thick sponge. The fatal flaw, however, was that he almost never changed or washed that sponge. In the sweltering heat, the sponge became saturated with human sweat, camel sweat, and desert grit, transforming into a foul-smelling bacteria trap. According to the documentary The Making of Lawrence of Arabia, the stench emanating from that saddle clung so fiercely to the actor's skin and costume that no chemical could immediately scrub it away. To make matters worse, O'Toole's heavy alcohol consumption pushed the situation over the edge. Throughout the shoot, he was reportedly drinking whiskey almost as a substitute for water to stay exhilarated and forget the exhaustion. Robert Duvall heard from colleagues that the scent of hard liquor didn't just come from O'Toole's breath. It seemed to seep out of every pore when he sweated under the sun. The combination of aged whiskey, accumulated sweat, and animal scent from the camel saddle created a thick, oppressive cloud of air around him. One crew member admitted that standing next to O'Toole at the time gave people a contact buzz and a splitting headache because the aroma was so overwhelming. Stylists and makeup artists of the era were forced to resort to a desperate measure, pouring liters of expensive cologne over O'Toole's costumes before every scene. Yet this effort was like a drop in the ocean, as chemical scents could not overpower the resonance of such extreme body odors. O'Toole, with his reckless artistic nature, seemed entirely indifferent. He viewed bathing in the middle of the desert as a waste of time and energy, choosing instead to pour all his focus into channeling the soul of Lawrence. This sacrifice earned him an Oscar nomination and immortal status in cinema history, but it also left a heavy-scented memory in the hearts of his collaborators. If the harshness of the desert turned O'Toole into an olfactory nightmare, our next figure proves that even in the most luxurious hotel suites, filth can exist as a byproduct of isolation and personal tragedy. That goddess is Ava Gardner, a woman whose beauty shook Hollywood but who hid a lifestyle that horrified her housekeepers. Why would a lady as magnificent as her allow her room to turn into a battlefield reeking of liquor and crusty cosmetics? We are about to uncover the secrets of Ava Gardner right now. Ava Gardner, behind the goddess's closed doors. In the memory of millions, Ava Gardner was the embodiment of lethal seduction, possessing captivating eyes and a transcendent ethereal beauty. But behind that radiance lay a fractured soul where isolation and chronic benders pushed her into a lifestyle that service staff described as a literal battlefield of neglect. Robert Duvall, having worked closely with her, couldn't help but feel a sense of sorrow upon realizing that such angelic beauty was sometimes shrouded in an incredibly messy personal reality. The tragedy of Ava Gardner stemmed from her total abandonment of self-care whenever she faced loneliness. According to interviews with the crew of the Barefoot Contessa, Ava had a habit of drinking from dawn until late at night. When the spirits took over her reason, personal hygiene became the last thing on her mind. A housekeeper once shared with The Hollywood Reporter that walking into Ava's private suite was like entering a cheap tavern after a riotous night. The pungent stench of hard liquor mingled with cigarette smoke and old cosmetics that were never washed away. The detail that haunted many colleagues the most was Ava's frequent habit of going to sleep without removing her makeup. The thick foundation, mascara, and lipstick from the previous day remained unwashed only to be layered over with fresh makeup the next morning. Over time, these layers became crusty and began to flake off the goddess's face, creating a sight that makeup artists described as extremely difficult to manage. During certain filming periods in Los Angeles, she reportedly didn't touch water for 3 consecutive days, leading to severe skin inflammation and clogged pores. Yet when questioned about her health, Ava would merely offer a cynical smile and call it the price of freedom. On set, this lack of hygiene led to both awkward and frustrating situations. Stylists occasionally had to request that Ava bathe before filming intimate scenes because the odor emanating from her body was too overwhelming. Robert Duvall admitted that while Ava's allure was undeniable, the air thick with the scent of alcohol and sweat surrounding her made maintaining emotional chemistry during scenes incredibly heavy. She was like a brilliant rose withering from the inside, rejecting all rules of cleanliness to immerse herself in her own defiance. Ava Gardner's lifestyle serves as a grim reminder that fame cannot fill the voids in the soul. If Ava's messiness carried the air of a personal tragedy, our next character chose a heavy scent as a manifesto of masculinity and the arrogance of a true bad boy. That man is Robert Mitchum, the dashing nomad of film noir who viewed bathing as an act of the weak and was willing to wear a single dirty outfit for an entire week of filming. Why did Robert Duvall call Mitchum the terror of tailors and stylists? We are about to find out right now. Robert Mitchum, the nomad and the suit that never changed. Robert Mitchum entered cinematic history as the icon of ruggedness, a true rogue with heavy-lidded eyes and a defiant swagger. But behind that weathered exterior actor, Robert Duvall witnessed a reality that he described as beyond the endurance of any production crew. To Mitchum, bathing or changing into clean clothes seemed like a luxury too far. In fact, he viewed such acts as effeminate, unfit for real men. This arrogance wasn't a result of necessity, but a part of his manifesto as a genuine bad boy. According to behind-the-scenes records from the peak of the film noir era, Mitchum was famous for wearing the exact same outfit day after day. During the filming of the masterpiece, The Night of the Hunter, 1955, the crew witnessed an unbelievable record. Mitchum barely changed his costume for an entire week under the scorching heat of the studio lights. His suit became so saturated with sweat, dirt, and heavy tobacco smoke that the fabric began to stiffen, radiating a signature scent that anyone could identify from a distance long before they saw his face. In a 1963 interview with Esquire, a member of the wardrobe team recalled a desperate tactic. They had to sneakily spray perfume onto the back of Mitchum's jacket while he was focused on reading his script, as no one had the courage to tell the giant to go take a shower. Another stylist revealed that the aroma surrounding Mitchum was a pungent resonance of stale sweat whiskey and cigarette smoke clinging to every strand of his hair. When subtly reminded, Mitchum would merely scoff, declaring that he lived by his own standards and refused to bow to the frivolous rules set by society or Hollywood. Mitchum's presence on set always created an invisible olfactory pressure for his co-stars. Robert Duvall recalled that actors sometimes had to hold their breath to finish close-up dialogue scenes because the scent emanating from Mitchum's body was so powerful it overwhelmed everything around it. He viewed being dirty as a flavor of freedom, a way to assert his nomadic ego uncontrolled by anyone. Robert Mitchum's lifestyle stands as a testament to pure rebellion, molding him into a legend that could not be tamed. But while Mitchum chose messiness to display his masculinity, our next figure neglected himself due to a manic obsession with words and frames, turning his workspace into a literal battlefield. That man is Orson Welles, the genius director behind the monumental Citizen Kane. This man turned the director's chair into a nightmare, reeking of stale food and accumulated sweat. Why was a timeless intellect like Welles warned by doctors about skin infections simply because he refused to bathe? Let's find out right now. Orson Welles, genius and the remnants of stale food. In the world of perfect frames, Orson Welles is revered as a saint of cinematic thought, a man who revolutionized the language of the seventh art when he was barely in his 20s. But behind that monumental mind, Robert Duvall and his contemporaries faced a completely different reality. A man who seemed to have declared war on all standards of personal hygiene in exchange for every second of creative time. To Welles, the body was merely a machine serving the intellect, and maintaining that machine with soap or water was often dismissed as an unforgivable waste of time. Orson Welles' messiness didn't stop at a simple dislike for bathing. It turned his workspace into a literal battlefield. During the production of The Trial, 1962, crew members in France witnessed firsthand the astonishing lifestyle of this genius director. Welles frequently worked through the night, eating and sleeping right at the editing table, wearing the same outfit for many days straight. According to insiders, the scent emanating from his body was a pungent symphony of accumulated sweat, cheap cigar smoke, and the smell of fast food clinging to the thick lining of his overcoat. Stylists who worked with Welles revealed to The Hollywood Reporter in 1965 details that made many shudder. They frequently found dried-up pizza slices, breadcrumbs, and grease stains stuck to his clothes from days prior. Welles's body odor permeated his director's chair so deeply that after the project ended, the chair often had to be destroyed because no chemical could scrub out that signature stench. In fact, according to biographical records, doctors once issued serious warnings about the risk of skin infections after seeing his skin severely irritated by prolonged dirt buildup. Yet Welles only responded with a dismissive laugh, stating, "I have work to do. Nothing else matters." Robert Duvall emphasized that Welles's presence always came with a suffocating atmosphere, making even his most devoted collaborators hesitant to enter his office. He lived in a world where cleanliness was considered frivolous, and the price of genius was sometimes the total sacrifice of basic living standards. Orson Welles' legacy is immortal, but stories of his untidiness remain a haunting shadow in behind-the-scenes history. However, while Welles neglected himself for his passion for art, our next figure chose filth as a weapon to rebel against the entire glamorous Hollywood system. That man is Marlon Brando, the king of defiance, who turned film sets into truly terrifying places with bizarre hygiene behaviors and a mask of sweat that was never washed away. Why did a titan like Brando choose to self-destruct his image with such grotesque slovenliness late in his career? Let's find out right now. Marlon Brando, the king and the rebellion of filth. Marlon Brando is the only name with enough gravity to overshadow the strictest standards of the movie capital. Revered as the king of method acting, Brando left behind not only immortal masterpieces like The Godfather or A Streetcar Named Desire, but also a legacy of eccentricity that truly terrified his colleagues. According to Robert Duvall's accounts, particularly toward the end of his career, Brando seemed to turn personal neglect into a sharp weapon to mock the studio system he so deeply despised. The peak of this rebellion was vividly marked on the set of The Island of Dr. Moreau, 1996. In his twilight years, Brando almost entirely abandoned any effort to maintain a basic civilized image before the public. In the documentary Lost Soul, the doomed journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau crew members recounted horrific experiences working alongside him in the sweltering heat of Queensland, Australia. Brando reportedly refused to bathe for days on end. Instead, he caked his face in a thick, bizarre layer of white powder, letting sweat streak through the makeup day after day without ever fully washing it off. Brando's stubbornness also extended to his insistence on wearing disheveled, foul-smelling costumes and rebuffing any intervention from image specialists. Robert Duvall and his contemporaries understood that for Brando, staying dirty wasn't due to a lack of resources, but an arrogant choice to ridicule the superficial glamour of the entertainment industry. A crew member once revealed that the air around the king was always thick with the scent of long accumulated sweat, mingled with the chemical odor of old powder, creating a suffocating atmosphere that made anyone hesitate to approach him. Not stopping at personal neglect, Brando also shocked everyone with bizarre behaviors such as wearing an ice bucket on his head simply because he felt hot and demanding the entire crew accept his appearance. This uncooperative attitude and total lack of respect for hygiene standards made Brando a symbol of on-set difficulty. Yet it was that very wild ego and his refusal to cleanse himself that created a haunting allure, making people both fear him and be unable to look away. Marlon Brando lived his life fully through his rebellion, using slovenliness to assert his status as an outlaw to all rules. However, in contrast to Brando's intentional rebellion, the final figure on this list carries a much more bitter secret. This is an icon whose image is synonymous with absolute elegance, yet he possessed an olfactory pain that turned the most romantic kisses in cinematic history into a co-star's worst nightmare. That man is Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood. Why did the beautiful Vivien Leigh have to hold her breath during every intimate scene with the world's most charming man? And what is the truth behind his breath, which bore the whole scent of death? Let's dive into the most shocking plot twist next. Clark Gable, the bitter secret of the king of Hollywood. Anyone who has seen Gone with the Wind likely holds the image of the elegant, rugged Rhett Butler in their heart, a man whose smile could melt millions of women. However, behind the dashing exterior of the young king of Hollywood, Clark Gable lay a grim truth that Robert Duvall and industry insiders often cited as proof that fame cannot always mask physical imperfections. This is the most shocking name on the list, a true plot twist, because his hygiene issue didn't stem from laziness or rebellion, but was the consequence of a health tragedy cloaked in artificial elegance. A little-known fact is that in 1933, at the peak of his career, Gable suffered a severe gum infection. The disease was so devastating that it forced him to have nearly all his natural teeth removed and replaced with dentures at a very young age. In an era where dental technology was still primitive, Gable's dentures became the source of chronic halitosis. According to the personal diary of screen legend Vivien Leigh, who played Scarlett O'Hara, having to perform passionate kissing scenes with Clark Gable was a true ordeal. She described his breath in horrifying terms, likening it to a stench of death that forced her to hold her breath whenever the camera drew near. The situation was exacerbated by Gable's own lifestyle. He was a heavy smoker, burning through 3 packs a day, which combined with frequent hard liquor consumption to turn his breath into an invisible weapon on set. Most notably, upon learning of his co-star's subtle complaints, Gable occasionally displayed an extreme mischievous streak. On certain days, he would intentionally eat raw garlic or onions before filming intimate scenes just to see Vivien Leigh's reaction. This transformed some of the most romantic kisses in cinematic history into the most painful moments an actor could endure behind the scenes. Robert Duvall emphasized that despite this controversial flaw, Clark Gable maintained a professional work ethic and an irresistible charm. He accepted living with his dentures and that unpleasant scent as part of his fate, using his natural talent to make audiences completely forget the harsh reality behind the glamorous frames. The Secret of Clark Gable closes the list of haunting hidden corners revealed by Robert Duvall. It serves as a reminder that behind expensive costumes and magical lights, Hollywood legends are just human beings filled with flaws, mistakes, and eccentric habits. Perhaps it was that very imperfection combined with extraordinary talent that forged the immortal icons we continue to admire to this day. 9 legends, 9 stories, and truths that sometimes make us shudder when looking back at the glory of Hollywood. Robert Duvall didn't tell these stories to criticize, but to show us that behind every great film are flesh and blood people with all their flaws and unbelievable eccentricities. Perhaps it was that very extremism, defiance, and occasional slovenliness that molded these immortal roles characters who, if they were too clean or too perfect, would no longer be the geniuses we worship. Which name's secret on this list shocked you the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments below so we can discuss. If you enjoyed these raw and haunting glimpses into the world of cinema, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in our upcoming journeys behind the scenes.